The sky was painted with streaks of violet and silver as Princess Zyra's warship hovered over the desolate battlefield. She stood tall, her emerald-hued skin glistening under the artificial lights of the command deck. Her golden eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the human forces below. They were a pathetic sight, small, fragile creatures with crude weapons and laughable battle formations. Humans, she scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. They are weak. Their bones snap like twigs, their flesh tears too easily. This conquest will be over before sunset. Her generals nodded in agreement, their armored figures towering behind her. The war had raged for months, and the humans had done little but delay the inevitable. Zyra was bred for war, trained in the art of destruction. To her, this was just another planet to claim, another species to conquer. Then she saw him. Amidst the chaos of battle, a lone warrior moved like a phantom through the field. He wielded nothing but a blood-stained blade, his body a blur of muscle and precision. Every strike was calculated, every movement fluid. He was outnumbered, yet the enemy fell before him like leaves in a storm. Zyra narrowed her eyes, intrigued. She zoomed in on the battlefield through her visor, analyzing his every motion. His name flashed on the screen, Commander Elias Kane, the last of Earth's elite warlords. Kane dodged a plasma bolt, pivoting with inhuman speed. His blade found the throat of an enemy soldier, slicing cleanly before he turned to face three more. His expression was calm, almost bored, as if war was nothing more than a dance he had mastered. For the first time in her life, Zyra felt something strange. It wasn't fear. It was curiosity. "Bring him to me," she ordered, her voice steady despite the odd flutter in her chest. Her warriors hesitated. "Your Highness, he is dangerous. It would be wise to eliminate him from a distance." "No," she snapped, her golden eyes blazing. "I want to see his strength up close." Minutes later, Kane was dragged aboard the ship, his hands bound in energy restraints. His armor was scorched, his blade confiscated, yet he stood before her with an air of defiance. "Princess Zyra," he said, his voice low and steady. "I assume you're the one leading this invasion." She smirked, stepping closer, her tall figure towering over him. "And I assume you are the last hope of your pathetic race." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Not hope, just the last one left standing." Zyra studied him. Up close, he was even more fascinating. His scars, his unwavering gaze, the sheer confidence radiating from him. Humans were supposed to beg, to plead. But this one, he was different. And for the first time, she wondered if conquering Earth would be as easy as she had thought. Zyra circled him like a predator sizing up prey, though something in Kane's unyielding stance unsettled her. He didn't look afraid. He wasn't broken like the other prisoners. Instead, there was a fire in his eyes, one that refused to be extinguished. "Tell me, Commander Kane," she mused, trailing a sharp claw under his chin but not quite touching. "What drives you to fight? Your world is crumbling. Your people are all but lost. Yet you stand before me as if you still have something to win." Kane smirked, tilting his head just enough to challenge her dominance. "Because I do." Her interest deepened. She had seen countless warriors fall to despair, their will snapping under the weight of defeat. But he held on to something she couldn't quite grasp. "Enlighten me," she said, stepping even closer. Kane chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You think strength is about power, about how many soldiers you command, how many planets you conquer. But strength isn't about numbers, Princess." He leaned in slightly, his gaze piercing into hers. "It's about resilience. It's about standing up even when the universe itself tries to crush you." A spark of something unfamiliar flickered inside her. Amusement? Admiration? No, impossible. She was Zyra, daughter of the supreme conqueror, bred for war, for victory. She had crushed empires beneath her heel. And yet, in this moment, a single human had made her question something fundamental. She scoffed, turning sharply. "Resilience is just another way of prolonging the inevitable. You will fall, just like the rest of your kind." Kane simply smiled. "Then why are you hesitating?" That stopped her cold. He was right. She had every reason to execute him, to end this now. And yet, she hadn't. Before she could respond, an alarm blared through the ship. One of her lieutenants rushed in. "Your Highness, the human resistance." Zyra raised a hand, silencing him, but Cain had already caught on. He laughed, the sound low and knowing. "Seems my people aren't as weak as you thought," he said, a glint of satisfaction in his eye. Zyra turned to her monitors, watching as human ships emerged from the wreckage, launching a surprise counterattack. She should have been furious. Instead, she found herself smiling. "Interesting," she murmured. This war had just become far more entertaining. The battlefield outside the ship erupted in chaos as human fighters, fueled by desperation and rage, tore through Zyra's fleet with surprising precision. They were small, yes, but they fought with a ferocity that seemed to defy logic. The princess stood, transfixed by the screens, watching as human ships weaved through the air like hornets in a storm. Cain stood beside her, a knowing smirk on his lips. "They're not weak, princess. We've just learned how to adapt. You, on the other hand, have underestimated us for far too long." Zyra turned sharply, her golden eyes narrowing. "You think this will turn the tide? You think your resistance will stop me?" Her voice was cold, commanding, but beneath it was something unexpected. A tinge of uncertainty she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. But Cain, to her surprise, wasn't fazed. "I don't expect you to understand. Most conquerors don't. They see power as a matter of sheer force, an easy path to victory. But you're forgetting something crucial." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You can crush 1,000 armies, but if you can't break the spirit of a single human, you'll never truly win." Zyra studied him, considering his words. She had always prided herself on her ability to anticipate every possible move, to control every battle. But this was different. The humans fought with something she had never encountered, a relentless will to survive, a refusal to accept their fate. "I'll make you an offer," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Your resistance is admirable, Cain, but you will lose. It's inevitable. Surrender now, and I'll spare your people. You can serve me, become one of my generals. I'll even give you the honor of leading the final assault against the humans who dare oppose me." Cain's expression never wavered. "And if I refuse?" he asked, his tone calm, almost bored. Zyra's smile was cold, predatory. "Then I'll make an example of you. You'll watch your people fall, one by one, until the last human breathes their final gasp under my heel." But Cain didn't flinch. Instead, he took a step closer, leaning in so his voice was a mere whisper. "I don't think you're as confident as you want everyone to believe. If you were, you wouldn't be here, speaking to me instead of wiping out the last remnants of my people." Zyra froze, a flicker of doubt creeping into her thoughts. He was right. Why was she still standing here debating him? Why hadn't she simply crushed him already? Cain smiled, a smile that held no arrogance, but something much deeper, something wiser. "You've seen our strength, princess. And deep down, you know you can't win without us. The humans will never bow to you, no matter how many ships you destroy. But there's another way." Zyra's mind raced. "And what would that be?" Cain's smile softened, but his eyes burned with a fire that was almost contagious. "You could join us." She blinked, taken aback. "Join you? You think I would lower myself to the level of a human?" Her voice grew colder, as though the very idea disgusted her. "Not as a human," Cain replied, "but as an ally. We're not as weak as you think, princess. We fight not because we can, but because we must. We fight because our very existence is on the line. And in that, we're stronger than anything you can throw at us. You're an invader, and I respect your strength. But if you want to win, if you want to truly understand what it means to conquer, you need to learn from us." Zyra's heart raced. Was this truly a challenge, or something more? There was a shift inside her, something unsettling but exhilarating. She had come here to conquer, to claim Earth as her own. But now, she wasn't so sure. She could feel it. The growing pull of Cain's words, the unspoken promise of something beyond mere victory. Something deeper. A part of her, perhaps the warrior within, wanted to accept his offer, to learn from the humans' indomitable will, their unyielding fire. "Tell me, Commander," she said, her voice low and steady. "If I were to join you, would your people truly accept me? Or would they destroy me like the rest of my kind?" Cain's smile widened, but there was no mockery in it, only understanding. "If you stand with us, princess, we'll fight together. Not as enemies, but as allies. We've survived by forging bonds, not by crushing them. and I think you'd be amazed at what we could accomplish. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath, the quiet tension hanging thick between them. Zyra found herself torn between her duty to her people and something far more dangerous, the pull of an idea that could change everything. She glanced at the monitors again, watching as the resistance fought with renewed fury, pushing back against her forces with unrelenting determination. Then, without a word, she turned back to Kane. "I'll need time to consider your offer," she said softly, almost to herself. Kane nodded. "Time is something we all have. But the question is, will you use it to conquer or to understand?" Zyra couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what her next move would be. As the tension hung in the air, Zyra's mind churned with conflicting thoughts. She was a conqueror, a ruler of countless worlds. She had never once been uncertain of her path. But something about Kane, about the resistance he embodied, struck a chord in her that she hadn't known existed. The human's fierce determination was like nothing she had ever encountered. It was foreign and intoxicating. She turned away from the viewports and paced across the command deck, her boots clicking sharply against the metallic floor. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of strategy and emotion, an unusual combination that left her unsettled. Kane, still restrained, remained silent for a long moment, watching her with an unwavering gaze. He could sense her inner conflict, the hesitation that lingered beneath the surface of her icy exterior. For a moment, he wondered if he had overstepped, if his words had planted a seed of doubt that might lead to disaster. But then, he saw something in her, a flicker of something human, something vulnerable. "You've never been challenged like this before, have you?" Kane's voice was low but steady, not mocking but curious, probing. Zyra stopped in her tracks and met his gaze. "What do you mean? You've always taken, haven't you? Always conquered. It's been so easy for you to destroy entire civilizations, to break their will. But now, you face a species that refuses to break." Kane's eyes sparkled with a mix of pride and defiance. "It's not the resistance itself that you're struggling with. It's the fact that it's forcing you to confront something deeper inside of yourself." Zyra clenched her fists. "I don't need to confront anything," she snapped. "I will destroy your resistance. I will take Earth, and your people will bow to me." Kane didn't flinch. "You don't understand, do you? You'll never break the humans the way you think you will. You're not just facing an army. You're facing something far stronger." Zyra's heart raced, a tinge of frustration building. She wanted to dismiss him, to crush his defiance, but something in his words gnawed at her. "Go on," she said, her voice icy but with a hint of curiosity. Kane leaned forward, the chains around his wrists rattling softly. "You talk of strength, of power, but true strength doesn't come from domination. It comes from unity. You can tear down armies, but if you don't understand the people you're trying to conquer, you'll always be outmatched." Zyra felt a flicker of something she couldn't name. This human, he wasn't like the others. The soldiers, the generals, the planets she had crushed, they had all broken under her power. But Kane, despite everything, stood tall, defiant, resilient. There was something in him that unnerved her, and yet, for the first time in her life, she wanted to understand it. "I have no interest in unity," she said, though her voice was less certain than before. "My empire is built on power, not weak bonds." Kane smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his features. "Power is easy to acquire, princess. But what's the point of power if you have no one left to rule?" Zyra's chest tightened. She could feel the weight of his words, like they were chiseling away at the walls she had built around herself. She had always been taught that conquest was about strength, about domination. But now, she wasn't so sure. Was it possible that there was something more? Something worth learning from the very people she had set out to destroy? She turned away again, pacing, unable to shake the thoughts swirling in her mind. She was a conqueror, yes, but what did that really mean? Was there a line between strength and tyranny? Had she crossed it without even realizing? The lights in the command deck flickered, and a harsh alarm blared through the ship once more, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to the monitors. A new wave of human resistance ships had appeared, cutting through her fleet like a storm. Zyra's heart quickened as she watched them move with precision, each ship acting in perfect unison, almost as if they were one single entity. For a moment, she stood frozen, transfixed by the sheer force of their unity. This wasn't just a resistance, it was a movement, an idea, a collective will stronger than any army. Cain was watching her intently. You see it now, don't you? He said quietly. It's not about their ships or their weapons. It's about their spirit. They will fight to the last breath because they have something worth fighting for. Zyra's fingers twitched, and for the first time, she felt something like doubt stir inside her, something she had never allowed herself to feel. I could destroy them, she murmured, almost to herself. I could wipe them out in a day. You could, Cain agreed. But at what cost? You'll win, yes. But you'll never truly conquer. You'll have nothing but broken pieces to rule over. Zyra turned to face him, a flicker of something almost resembling respect in her eyes. And what would you have me do, then? Cain's gaze softened. Join us. Work with us, not against us. We don't need to fight each other forever. There's a way forward where we both win. His voice was calm, measured, but there was a fire in it too, a conviction that made her wonder if there was more to this human than she could see. Zyra stood in silence, her mind a maelstrom of thoughts. She had spent her entire life conquering, bending worlds to her will. But now, before her, stood a man who believed that power was not just about domination. It was about something deeper, something more human. She looked out at the battlefield once more, her mind torn. The ships of the human resistance clashed with her forces in a desperate dance. But now, the sight didn't fill her with anger. It filled her with curiosity. Could there be another way? Zyra stared at the battle unfolding on the screens, her mind racing. For the first time in her life, the sight of conflict didn't fill her with the exhilaration of victory or the cold satisfaction of crushing her enemies. Instead, it stirred something else, a strange sense of understanding. But just as the idea of joining the humans began to settle in her thoughts, a new message flashed across the control panel. A priority signal. A communication she hadn't expected and certainly didn't want. Princess Zyra, came the voice, cold and commanding. This is Supreme Commander Varric. You have failed. Zyra's breath caught in her throat. Her father, Varric, her father, the ruler of their empire, was a force of nature. Unyielding, ruthless, and cunning. He had spent decades building the empire that Zyra was now tasked with expanding. She had been trained to be his heir, to follow in his footsteps, to never question the supremacy of their people over all others. You are to return immediately to the mothership, Varric's voice continued, more insistent now. The invasion is failing. I will not allow you to squander our legacy because of some misguided notion of mercy or alliance with these humans. Zyra's jaw tightened, but she didn't immediately respond. The words of her father burned through her like acid. He had never been one to tolerate weakness, and now, hearing his tone, she knew what was coming. He would never allow her to abandon this conquest. You are dismissed from your command. Varric's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. I will be taking over this operation myself. Prepare for your return. Zyra's heart sank. Her hands clenched into fists. For a moment, her gaze shifted to Cain. He stood there, watching her intently, as though he knew exactly what had just transpired. There was no fear in his eyes, just that quiet confidence she had come to both respect and despise. Your father wants you to fail, Cain said softly, his voice calm but filled with a deep understanding. He's already made his decision. You're not his heir anymore. You're just another soldier in his army. Zyra's eyes flicked to him, her golden gaze cold, but a flicker of doubt danced in the depths of her mind. You don't know him, she retorted, though she knew, deep down, that Cain was right. Varric had never seen her as anything but a tool to expand his empire. He would sacrifice her without a second thought if it meant achieving victory. The voice of Varric crackled through the comms again, more forceful this time. Do not test me, Zyra. Return at once, or face the consequences. Zyra felt the weight of her father's command bearing down on her. She had always obeyed him, followed his orders without question. That was how she had been raised, how every warrior in her line had been raised. But now, she wasn't so sure. Her gaze drifted back to the monitors. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were adapting, evolving. They were unified in a way her empire never had been. They fought with purpose, with a drive that felt almost organic. For the first time, she wondered if this was what her father had always feared. The humans have something we don't. Cain's voice broke through her thoughts. They have something you might never have experienced, true loyalty to each other. A unity forged from their struggles, from their survival. Your father sees that as weakness, but I see it as strength. Zyra closed her eyes, the weight of her father's command heavy on her shoulders. She had been raised to believe that power was an end in itself, that strength was only measured by what you could destroy. But King Cain was right. There was something in him, in the humans, that was different. It wasn't about dominating. They fought for each other. They fought for their future. She turned to Cain, her voice barely a whisper. What do you think I should do? Cain's eyes softened. You're the one who has to decide. You don't need to follow your father's path. You don't need to be his soldier anymore. You could be something more. Something better. Just as the words hung in the air, a sudden tremor shook the ship. The lights flickered, and an emergency alarm sounded. What's happening? Zyra demanded, her voice sharp. A lieutenant rushed in, his face pale. Your Highness, the mothership is under attack. We've detected a breach in the outer hull. Before he could finish, the comms system blared with a loud, distorted message from the mothership itself. We've been betrayed. Zyra's heart skipped a beat. The transmission crackled again, a moment of silence before the voice spoke once more. Commander Varek is dead. The voice was cold, mechanical, but unmistakable. The rebellion has reached the heart of our empire. You are all now fugitives. Zyra's blood ran cold. The walls of her world were crumbling, and for the first time, she didn't know what to do. Cain's eyes locked with hers, a quiet understanding passing between them. Your father underestimated the humans, he said softly, but his words carried a weight Zyra had never imagined. Now, it seems they've turned the tables. The reality hit her like a physical blow. The humans, the very species she had set out to conquer, had not only resisted, they had infiltrated her empire, torn it apart from the inside. The rebellion wasn't just a force fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the very heart of their existence, and now, they had succeeded. Zyra's eyes darted to the monitors. The human ships had broken through her fleet, and now the mothership, the beating heart of her empire, was under siege. This isn't over, she whispered, more to herself than to Cain. I won't let this be the end. Cain nodded, his expression filled with a sense of purpose. Then fight with us. Help us rebuild. Help us protect what's left. It's the only way you can truly defeat the chaos your empire has created. Zyra stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. The empire she had known her entire life was crumbling, her father dead, her soldiers scattered. The humans had turned the tables. But one thing was clear, she had a choice now. She could follow the path of destruction she had always known, or she could forge a new one. And for the first time, Zyra realized that the power she sought might not lie in conquering. It might lie in creating something new. Zyra stood motionless, the gravity of her situation pulling at her like a sinking stone. The empire she had known, the very foundation of her existence, had fractured in a way she couldn't have anticipated. Her father, the supreme commander, was dead, his vision of domination scattered by the very resistance he had dismissed as weak. The sounds of battle echoed through the walls of the command deck, but for Zyra, the world had become silent. Her thoughts swirled, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of her choices pressing down on her. Cain's calm voice broke through the haze of her thoughts. You don't have to do this alone. She turned to face him, eyes still clouded with doubt. He had offered her a choice, but it was one she wasn't sure she could embrace. She had been bred for one thing, victory, at any cost. Yet, in front of her stood the remnants of a species that had fought for its survival against an empire that had once seemed unstoppable. The human rebellion had crushed her father's empire from within, not with sheer force, but with unity, resilience, and a belief in something greater than themselves. Cain had spoken the truth. Power wasn't in dominating, it was in creating bonds, in fostering strength through shared purpose. Where do we go from here? She asked, her voice quieter than she had intended. Cain looked at her with a steady gaze, the slightest hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. We rebuild. Together. As the human ships continued to push back the remnants of her fleet, Zyra felt the cold weight of responsibility settle upon her shoulders. Her father's empire was falling apart, but perhaps there was something more to be built from the wreckage. She turned back to the viewport. The battle was still raging, but now she saw it in a different light. The human fighters weren't just defending their world. They were fighting for a new future, one where they didn't have to live under the heel of an empire. They were fighting for freedom, for something worth preserving. It was then that Zyra realized the truth. She had spent her entire life trying to conquer, to bend the universe to her will. But in the end, what truly mattered wasn't how many worlds you could control, but how many hearts you could inspire to rise and fight alongside you. She turned back to Cain, her decision now clear. "I'll stand with you," she said, her voice firm, though something inside her had shifted. "But I need to help my people too. They deserve a chance to live without fear, without tyranny." Cain nodded, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "We will fight for that, Zyra. For both of us. For the future we choose to build." The alarms blared again, but this time, Zyra wasn't afraid. She wasn't standing alone. She had made a choice, not just for herself, but for what she could become. The empire might be crumbling, but she was no longer a tool of destruction. She was a force for change. Together, she and Cain turned toward the future, where the true battle wasn't about destruction, but about the rebuilding of a fractured world. Zyra knew the road ahead would be hard, filled with challenges she had never before faced, but she was ready. She had once thought the humans were weak. Now, she understood, strength was not in the power to crush, but in the courage to stand together and rebuild what had been lost. The universe had a new conqueror now, but this time, it was a conqueror not of worlds, but of hearts. And that was a power far greater than any empire.